Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
The Toronto Blue Jays situation just got a whole lot more complicated, and we need to talk about what this latest report actually means for the direction of this offseason. Because while everyone's been laser focused on Kyle Tucker and Bo Bichette, there's another name that keeps popping up in ways that should make fans pay very close attention: Alex Bregman. And the frequency of these reports linking Toronto to Bregman is starting to feel less like speculation and more like legitimate smoke. A new report dropped from a Tigers beat writer confirming that the Detroit Tigers aren't really in the Bregman sweepstakes anymore, at least not right now. Their interest has remained lukewarm throughout the entire offseason, but here's what matters for Blue Jays fans. The reporter specifically named 4 teams that have been actively pursuing Bregman: the Blue Jays, Red Sox, Cubs, and Diamondbacks. Not could be interested or monitoring the situation, actively pursuing. That's present tense, that's current engagement, and that's coming from a credible source with insider knowledge. Now we're getting close enough to spring training that any team still in these conversations is essentially a finalist. The window for making big moves is shrinking by the day, and if Toronto is still actively involved in the Bregman discussions at this stage, that tells you something significant about their plans. This isn't just due diligence or creating leverage. This is a real option they're seriously considering. What makes this even more interesting is the timing and consistency of these reports. Ken Rosenthal mentioned the Jays' connection to Bregman. Jeff Passan has talked about it. Now we're getting confirmation from yet another reputable reporter that Toronto remains in the mix. When you start seeing multiple independent sources all pointing in the same direction, you have to start taking it seriously. This isn't coming from one guy with an agenda or throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. This is a pattern. Let's think about what this means practically. There's a world where the Blue Jays could land both Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker. Would it be expensive? Absolutely. But would it be more expensive than Tucker and Bichette together? Probably not. And that's where the math starts getting really interesting for Toronto's front office. Bregman put up an .822 OPS last year with 18 home runs and solid defense at third base. He's exactly the kind of player Ross Atkins loves. Great defender, disciplined at the plate, proven postseason performer, someone who fits seamlessly into a contending lineup. The longer these free agencies drag out, the better it might be for Toronto. There have been rumblings that Kyle Tucker isn't going to hit that $400 million threshold that some people projected. Estimates are coming in around 12 years and $385 million. Still massive money, obviously, but not quite the record-breaking deal some expected. If Bregman's market is similarly softening as teams fill other roster spots and budgets tighten, maybe Toronto can get both guys at numbers that actually work. But here's the uncomfortable question Blue Jays fans need to ask themselves. Are you okay with Alex Bregman if they don't get Bo Bichette and don't get Kyle Tucker? Because in a direct comparison, Bregman is probably the third choice among those 3 players. If Tucker decides he wants to go elsewhere and Bichette gets a better offer from San Francisco or Boston and Toronto lands Bregman as the consolation prize, that's still an upgrade. You absolutely cannot go into next season without adding a significant bat. Standing pat after trading away pieces and watching your core age another year would be organizational malpractice. The scarier scenario is if Toronto is actively choosing Bregman over Tucker or Bichette, if they're prioritizing infield fit or defensive versatility or whatever internal metrics they value, and that leads them to prefer Bregman, that's when fans should start getting nervous. Because while Bregman is a very good player, he's not Kyle Tucker. He's not the dynamic offensive force Tucker is, and he's getting into his mid-30s with the kind of contract that could age poorly if things go wrong. What's also notable is the increasing smoke around other teams and Bo Bichette specifically. The Red Sox make sense. The Giants keep getting mentioned. Multiple reporters are talking about how Bichette would fit well in various organizations. Usually where there's smoke, there's fire, especially this close to decision time. And the more we hear about Toronto being in on Bregman, the less we hear about them being aggressive on bringing Bichette back. That shift in the reporting could be telling us something about what's actually happening behind closed doors. Chris Iannetta, former major leaguer turned analyst, said recently that he'd like to see Bregman in Toronto because it's a really good fit. He's not wrong. Defensively, it makes sense. The lineup construction works. Bregman has that championship pedigree from Houston. But good fit doesn't automatically mean best fit, and it doesn't mean Toronto should settle for good when great might still be available. John Heyman dropped a report a few days ago saying the Blue Jays' biggest move may be yet to come, and he specifically mentioned they're considering either Bichette or Bregman alongside Kyle Tucker, so the framework seems to be Tucker plus one of those two. If you're building the optimal roster, Tucker and Bichette gives you more offensive upside and keeps a homegrown star in the organization. Tucker and Bregman gives you better defense and maybe more short-term certainty, but less ceiling. Meanwhile, the relief pitching market keeps shrinking, and Toronto still hasn't made another significant move after Tyler Rogers. Hunter Harvey just signed with the Cubs. Pete Fairbanks went to the Marlins. The options are dwindling. You've still got Kenley Jansen available, Sir Anthony Dominguez, who would be an absolute perfect fit as a lefty, and guys like Justin Wilson who could provide valuable depth. But every day that passes is another quality reliever off the board, and Toronto needs to address that bullpen before spring training starts. Looking at what's left in free agency for relievers, it's getting thin. Kirby Yates is still out there, but he's older and comes with risk. Jacob Junis could be a depth piece, but the top-tier guys are gone or going fast, and Toronto cannot afford to head into the season with the same bullpen questions that plagued them down the stretch last year. They need a reliable lefty specialist at minimum, someone who can get those crucial outs in high-leverage situations. There's been some buzz about Ricky Tiedemann potentially being that lefty out of the bullpen, and Keegan Matheson wrote recently that Tiedemann is the player he's most interested in watching in spring training. It's been 2 or 3 years since peak Tiedemann hype, but maybe we're entering a second wave. If he can stay healthy and contribute out of the bullpen, that would solve a major problem, but you can't bank on that. You need proven commodities, especially when you're supposedly building a contender. The reality is we're approaching crunch time. Spring training is 2 months away. The big dominoes need to start falling, and when they do, Toronto better be positioned to land their targets. Whether that's Tucker and Bichette, Tucker and Bregman, or some other combination, standing still is not an option. The reports are flying, the connections are real, and Bregman keeps coming up in ways that suggest this is more than just smoke. So the question for Blue Jays fans becomes this: if the choice is Bregman or nothing, are you taking Bregman? If it's Bregman and Tucker versus Tucker and Bichette, which combination do you prefer? These aren't hypotheticals anymore. These are the actual decisions Toronto's front office is navigating right now, and the reports suggest Bregman is a very real part of those conversations. The next few weeks are going to tell us everything about what kind of team the Blue Jays are building and whether they're truly going for it or settling for good enough.